Good afternoon. On behalf of Holzfire, I'd like to welcome you to Wisdom Wednesday. Participating in the Wisdom Wednesday webinars is an opportunity to learn from leading experts on topics related to healthy eating, active living, capacity building, communications, and more. Today's webinar, Continuum of Collaboration, will help you to gain deeper understanding of collaboration. You will hear about new ideas, the key reasons behind why people participate in community coalitions, how to recruit potential members, and most importantly, how to help keep them engaged. You'll get ideas to broaden coalition membership while also recognizing the importance of aligning current collaborative efforts with new partners to accomplish overall goals. This webinar is brought to you by Healthy Blue of South Carolina, the official managed care organization of Holzfire. We want to hear from you, so if you have any questions at any time during the presentation, please add them to the Q&A and they'll be answered at the end of the webinar. My name is Meg Stanley, and I'm the Executive Director at Holzfire. I'm the moderator for today's webinar with some help from Brandy Freeman, our Manager of Marketing and Communications. We'd like to welcome our presenter, Dr. Pam M. She received her doctorate in clinical and community psychology from the University of South Carolina and began working in community coalitions to reduce and prevent alcohol and drug use in the early 90s. As a community psychologist, Dr. M continues to work with local, state, and national agencies to improve collaborative efforts in prevention. She's affiliated with LORADAC, the Alcohol and Drug Use Agency in Lexington and Richland counties. She's also the co-founder of the Courage Center, a local recovery community organization that focuses on youth and families. Welcome, Dr. M.
Thank you. It looks like we've got people joining us, so I'm very happy about that. We have some big thinkers. It's always good to have the big picture. And also those of you who see yourself as decision makers, which to me, that means that you're able to take charge sometimes of situations and move things forward. And then we also have a silent contributor, at least one of them. And so anyway, we want to thank you for completing that exercise and getting us able to know you at least a little bit. So the title of our presentation today is The Psychology of Collaboration, or How to Play Nice in the Sandbox. As Meg mentioned, it looks like we're going to be using the Q&A for responses, and I will have some questions, just so you know. Although maybe, Meg, does it look like maybe the chat feature is working now? I'm not sure. But anyway, we'll certainly move forward in the way that makes the most sense. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the next slide. Here are the learning objectives, right? Every presentation has a good slide that details these. I truthfully think that Meg's already talked about these, but you can, quickly take a glance. We want to tell you why people collaborate and what are some ways that you might be able to broaden your membership of collaboration, something that we're all always trying to think about and do. Okay, next slide. How to play nice in the sandbox. This is where we have a little interaction for you all. Again, looks like we're going to mainly do this through the Q&A. So my question here is, what do you see in this picture? And specifically, I'm wanting you to comment on the environment, right? And think about collaboration. It's actually a young girl is in the sandbox and certainly by herself. And so just put in a couple words that you might think about as you are looking at this picture. And I'll give you, I don't know, maybe 25 to 30 seconds to do this. It's not anything, of course, where there's a test. We're just wanting to get some dialogue started. So thank you for doing that. And Meg, just so you know, I'm not seeing anyone typing. It might be that you are. If you can feel free to just share some of those with me.
No, I see one person say that there's lots of toys, but nobody else to play with or work with. She's alone. She has lots of tools.
Yes, yes. She likes the diggers and the buckets, and she knows the value of a good shovel, right? Right. So, you know, a lot of times when we're in coalitions, we sometimes wonder, like, you know, where's our help? And so this young lady really represents really a good beginning. She's got a lot of resources in front of her. And I'm optimistic in my general way of wanting to anticipate that she's getting ready for some good collaboration. So thank you for participating in that. And Brandy, you can go ahead and move our slide forward. Okay, so certainly when we're talking about concepts, one of the things to do in the beginning is to define, to have a definition of what we're talking about. So in this case, collaboration is a mutually beneficial and well-defined relationship entered into by two or more organizations to achieve common goals. This is a pretty standard definition, so you all know I have the reference down there. Sometimes you'll see it where they'll say, you know, to achieve goals that couldn't be done, you know, by yourself or only with two organizations, that kind of thing. But I've underlined some of these words because these are the key components of it. And sometimes, you know, you want to dig around into a little bit about some of those key components. So if you could go ahead and forward the next slide. Usually people are like, what do you mean by a well-defined relationship? And so there's a couple bullet points here for that, which is a mutual commitment, right? Things are done jointly. Certainly authority is shared, and that resources and rewards are also shared. So, you know, we take risks together, but we also get rewards together. And that certainly, you know, can be from a variety of things, including even having high quality implementation and also getting some of the results you desire, which, you know, we all appreciate that. Okay, next slide. What we want to do today is introduce you to this continuum of collaboration, because a lot of times people think that they're collaborating and they're really not. They're really not, or they haven't done it to the extent that certainly meets that definition, but also might be as useful as it could be. So we're going to share with you a little bit about some of the differences between networking, cooperation, coordination, and collaboration, which is what we really see as kind of the highest level to most of us. So if you can go ahead and forward the new slide. Great. Okay, so here are some very specific differences by kind of a description. Okay, so networking. I attend your event you invited me to. Okay, you told me that you're having an open house, that everybody who works in the area of youth, like I do, you've invited to come over and to see your new place, get to know people, et cetera, et cetera. So when I show up there and get to know people and see your new place and make new connections, I'm really networking. Okay, we're not really collaborating on anything together. All right. The next level is cooperate. Okay, my group is going to help your group do something. So this might be the case where, you know, you call us up and you say, hey, we're going to be putting on a town hall meeting and we need, we'd like to have, you know, 6 youth to be involved. That could be everything from ushering people to a seat, to handing out agendas, to helping with, you know, the technology when it doesn't work. Could you come and help us or implement that event? So my group is cooperating with your group, right? We're not getting involved in any of the planning. We're not getting involved in any of sort of the high level, kinds of stuff. We're really not doing anything together. We're assisting you, and we're showing up and doing a task. So that's cooperation. And we probably, I'm sure, in our personal and professional life have a lot of examples of that. Okay. The next level is coordination. And a way of thinking about this is that we're going to work together on a project. It's not going to be something that we're going to keep doing. It is still probably a one-time project, but we have some coordination going on here. So in my example of the town hall, you might connect with me and say, like 6 months before it happens, and say, look, we're getting ready to plan this event, and we need people that represent youth organizations to help us, and we're all having a meeting. We've got maybe 6 groups that are coming to help us. Can you come to, and everybody's going to come to a meeting to help plan. Okay. So that's really the coordination part, where we know we would come up with some kind of, plan for moving forward. And we know that this group is going to be in charge of planning and making sure everything is done with the food. This group is going to plan and make sure everything is done with the speaker. This group is going to plan and make sure everything is done with, sort of the setting. So you can see that's a little bit more of a connectedness in terms of coordinating something that's probably going to happen once or twice. And then we're going to kind of go back to, but we're not going to continue to work together in that way. Now, collaboration really is at a deeper level in that things are exchanged more intently, right? And so here, when you look at the definition, you think about you see words like, we co-planned or jointly planned something. We're both in a leadership role, right? It's not like everybody's going to just one person for an answer, because we've collaborated on this. We're sharing accountability. We're sharing the risk. And again, at least more than 2 agencies. So remember that in that definition earlier. We've pulled our resources together for this. And we've really, had a team in terms of collaborating and making sure things work out how they should work out. So those are a list of some of the ways you can think about some of these differences. Okay, next. Here's some more examples. Again, networking, you bring people together. It might be that, there's some kind of knowledge transfer, but in general, it's really more networking. This might be a drop-in. This might be some kind of youth event, arts, sports activity. A little bit more about examples of cooperations here, like the relationships are still formal. It's really that other organization that's asking me to help them. They're not giving me any resources. We're just kind of going in to help be ushers with the youth. So some examples of that is you can set up, someone might say, yes, I'll cooperate with you. You can set up in my organization's parking lot and give out fresh foods. Right? The people who are in the parking lot, they're really not doing anything, but they're cooperating. They're not doing anything about the implementation of the event, but they are cooperating and, sharing their parking lot as a resource. Another example is maybe an alcohol and drug abuse agency is going to a health fair, and the mental health people say, oh, I'd really like to get my information out, but I can't go. And I say, okay, well, I'll take your stack of stuff and put them on my table, right? You can have some of my table. So I'm cooperating with you in terms of getting information out. Next slide. Coordination. Remember, this is where, the individual or the agencies, organizations are still separate, but there is some interaction going on around one particular project with, usually has a start and an end time. An example we have here is maybe one of the chapters of Holspire. They get some local organizations to help clear some safe walking paths, maybe for the elderly or, different populations. Another might be one group organizes a farmer's market and invites various farms to attend, various people in the farms, of course. Again, we're coordinating to make sure an event goes off well. Collaboration, however, is more about we're more connected, we're more involved. We probably meet over time a lot. We might even develop a shared mission. We have, again, joint planning, and we try to be pretty comprehensive in how we do that. Leadership is shared, control is shared. We pull our resources together. So some examples here, DHEC group plans to improve a garden for a neighborhood school. Everybody chips in, everybody gets, input on the plan, everybody participates, and they even recruit more partners. And come to find out, it worked out so well, they really want to continue with collaboration, and they plan to do a garden every year for one school. So again, different levels with each time getting a little deeper. Next slide. Here are some additional indicators that might suggest you're collaborating, okay? Because again, we want to make sure that when, Holspire or some other funder or some other group says we want you to collaborate, that you really know what that means in terms of the level of energy and effort to be connected in that way. So one indicator, everybody makes time to meet, probably spend time together for reciprocal learning. And pretty much what that means is there's a period of time where everybody knows it's like the third Wednesday, that's when we're meeting, third Wednesday of the month kind of thing. People now are doing a lot of MOUs, memorandums of understandings. And this is where, you document the commitments of each partner, and everybody signs it. And so everybody really knows, what the role is in terms of a larger project for your organization. If you're involved in the grant world at all, if you write a grant to the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, it used to be that everybody wanted support letters. Well, what they say now is do not submit support letters or you're not going to be reviewed. What they want is MOU, is a letter of commitment, right? So they want to know in this, grant application, which might be a fair amount of money, what have you already been able to secure in terms of commitment from people you're going to be collaborating with. Another indicator that you're really collaborating is opportunities to enhance each other's capacity. A lot of this sometimes is around training, right? It's the idea that, if I'm an alcohol and drug agency and a mental health agency, and we agree that we're seeing kind of the same kind of people, well, maybe a training on co-occurring disorders, which includes alcohol and drug and mental health, would be a good idea for both of us to attend, and maybe we even, participate together in it. So the idea of, everyone is getting some more capacity or knowledge. Membership is becoming increasingly diverse. Certainly that's something everybody should always be reaching for and working on. And I know that we do. And it's nice to see when we have different groups of people coming in, because it does suggest that, we're doing something well in terms of collaboration and how we involve people and being inclusive and certainly getting everybody's understanding and input. More intentional cross-training. Again, the idea that, it shouldn't, that if people really want to benefit from this collaboration, having training opportunities is usually one way that shows some genuine collaboration. One or more projects undertaken for longer term results. That was the example that we gave about the garden and the schools. They're going to continue to do it. And then equal risk is shared by all organizations in the collaboration. Okay, it's not just my agency or my organization that's going to pay for this grant writer to, write a grant. Everybody has agreed to chip in some amount of money to fund our efforts to get a grant for the bigger collaborative. So those are just some additional indicators that collaboration is really, really going on. All right, next slide. Okay, so now is the part where you all get to be a little bit more interactive. And what we would like to do is to have this scenario read, and then to ask you, of the 4 types of collaboration, which one is this? Is this networking, coordinating? No, I'm sorry, networking, cooperating, coordinating, or collaboration. Okay, I would let you read it yourself, but since we're on the speaker, I'm going to go ahead, or since we're on video, I'm going to go ahead and do it. Okay, so 2 separate organizations distribute fresh food weekly to those in food deserts. There's been a great turnout in some parts of the county, but not really in the rural settings. Leaders from the two organizations, they each report to their own funder about the progress that they're making in distributing food. One partner does the promotion through social media, and the other partner relies on his or her friends and informal partnerships to advertise the food distribution. So, for example, they might put up flyers in churches or at schools or in the community. They do not meet regularly, and each uses its own funds and staff for actually distributing it. So your task now, and I think we, if you go to the next slide, Brandy, I think, again, I put sort of what the 4 are. So I'd like to give you maybe a minute or 2 to, just sort of review networking, cooperate, coordinate, and collaborate, and go ahead and put in the Q&A. I think we've agreed that's the best place, which you think this category is. We see 2. I see 2 in there. Good. Thank you, Ms. Pearson and Ms. Kynard. Anybody else want to take a stab at it? So Shelley, we're just reading the, we're reading the paragraph, long paragraph. Maybe you got to send that back, Brandy. And reading this real quickly and answering, is this networking, cooperation, coordination, or collaboration? And so people were putting some answers in the Q&A. Okay, well, we have got a very consistent group here, right? Very consistent. So you all are sharing that it seems like it's coordination. And one of the reasons that I wanted you to do this is sometimes, it's not always clear, right? And so if you would have said coordination, if you would have said cooperation, I would have said, I could see it being cooperation. And if you said coordination, I would say, I could see it being like that. And so again, at some level, in terms of the language that is used to describe, or even, your work, it doesn't, really matter. But the idea is that you might be able to go deeper into a collaborative effort by doing some additional things, right? So if you can take the slide back one more time for the activity, Brandy. So what you see here at the bottom is that, one partner's doing social media, the other one is, really advertising kind of stuff, which is fine. Maybe they want to bring in another partner that has another role in terms of how they advertise or even get the food out there. Maybe they are able to meet more regularly and think about how they could get a bigger bang for their buck if they involve different groups from the rural community or the rural settings that they're trying to access, right? So part of our challenge, and it's certainly stuff that I think about a lot, and my guess is you all do too, is who else needs to be at this table? Who else needs to be there? How can bringing in, somebody from a different geographic location or a different agency or organization be helpful to get more meaningful collaboration, basically, so you can get more done with more people. And it's always great to have diverse opinions too. So different types of collaborators, different types of people, different types of organizations. Okay, we can move forward. Thank you, Brandy. And one more. All right, so we're switching to the next part now, which is, why do people even participate in collaboratives, right? It seems kind of messy. You're in there with a bunch of people, some you know well, some you don't really, and sometimes we use a lot of acronyms and different kinds of languages, and we're wondering what's going on. But if you think about yourself, or even people that that are coalition, alliance sort of groupies, you'll probably recognize or see some of this. So some of it is passion, right? And a lot of times this comes from lived experience, that something happened to me, my family member, a child, and internally, because I've had that lived experience and I really want people to be healthy and safe, that that's what drives me. That passion drives me to be connected. Sometimes people have passion for different age groups, sometimes different kinds of settings. So passion is really a big one. And I would imagine if we took a poll here, even our silent contributor probably has a lot of passion in her heart in terms of moving things forward and getting things done, because we want that to be the case for our communities and for the people who live there. Another motivator is self-interest, and this includes benefits to the community and to the self, right? It's not necessarily ego driven. It can be, and that might pop out in other ways, right? Where you see that going on later in the collaborative. But it takes all kinds, right? Sometimes people are looking for a little bit of power, a little bit of influence, maybe prestige. Sometimes they might have a hidden agenda, like, oh, somebody told me it's really good to work for that agency. I'm going to go over there and play with them in the sandbox for a little bit and sort of see what I think about that. And sometimes it fills a personal or psychological reason where it might be that a therapist says, well, Miss Jones, there was a time that you were really active in the community and you've gone through this period of depression. You're really coming out of it. We really both agree you're coming out of it. It's time for you to get reconnected into something that's community-based, right? Again, could be that. Sometimes we don't know. Mandates, right? This happens more than we know and than we think. A law or policy says that you have to work together, right? Usually that's not always seen as good, maybe, or useful. I will say that I have been involved in collaboratives where people were mandated to collaborate, and while they might not have thought that was a great idea, it ended up being a great thing and still exists. So one of the things I think about was way back in the early 90s when there was enabling legislation that required all these partners to form something called First Steps. You all are probably familiar with that or have heard about that. There were bumps, absolutely, in the beginning. Now, as it's been going on probably close to 20 years, my guess is it's even more like a well-oiled machine in terms of being able to get stuff done. So don't be too alarmed if you're walking to a situation where you're like mandated to collaborate, because sometimes it works out. Sometimes you just want new connections or resources, right? Maybe you just moved to the area and you were doing the same kind of thing in another state you lived in, right? And so you want to get connected, and so you participate in a meeting and might even continue with the collaborative. Okay, next slide. All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about recruitment and retention. And I say a lot that, recruitment is actually pretty straightforward and isn't always all that challenging. It's the retention. It's keeping people there that can really, present the biggest challenge. But in thinking about who you're going to recruit, again, this could be that you're just starting a collaborative. It could be that you need to find more organizations that are different, or people that have a new perspective, or have new skills, right? Maybe you're getting ready to become a 501c3 and you're like, oh my gosh, we have to have somebody that knows about budgets, or that likes to write and could be a secretary, or take notes. So consider, what skills are you looking for to fill some kind of gap that you might have in a collaborative. Think about how many people that you might want to invite to join. And, usually people want to have a lot, which is good. But remember, that can be a little bit more of a challenge in terms of things like scheduling kind of stuff. Sometimes we're like, oh, well, my neighbor, he is really good at growing vegetables. He does it in his backyard all spring and summer. He might want to be in the collaborative, which might be the case, and it also might be true and work out fine. But it also brings in some other challenges when there are special relationships that exist, right? So it could be that maybe my neighbor, thinks that I'm going to pick all the vegetables, or, wants me to, do things that really isn't my role, right? So again, something to think about as you're doing some recruiting. But in general, familiarity and previous experiences, like working together and having histories of positive working relationships, is a good reason to at least invite somebody to come to some meetings and think about collaborating. When I'm thinking about this, the only thing I know is, what I know. And it's like, who did I work with in the past about this issue? Or what, what previous experience, or who has previous experiences in, this topic that I really think, would be good. It's always very important to think about, in this slide, we call it the end users, but it's really the idea of, who is this going to impact, right? We're doing all this work to change, people that have a hard time, getting treatment for mental health or alcohol use disorder. It's like, you really want to involve them in the collaborative. They have experiences and, certainly a variety of challenges that you probably need to know about, right? But they also probably have some things that would be useful in terms of, planning and, making more of a specific work plan. So invite them, be gracious, consider them part of us, right? Not separate. And I'm sure many of you know the power of that and are able to do that regularly. You think about different kinds of people who join. Well, one expression people kind of talk about is, the queen bees, right? They might be popping in just for a little bit because they're interested in knowing what's going on. And that's fine, because maybe they don't stay around, but it might be that the queen bee sort of attracts other people to come to the collaborative. So she might be able to identify, or also recruit people who think would be good for this. And it's like, oh, Mary's doing that, or Bill's doing that. I really respect Mary and Bill. I think it probably would be something I'd be interested in. So at least I'm going to go and try and check it out. So I don't know, maybe some of you, or some of all of us, are the queen bees. I'm not quite sure. Territory, one of the things that we know is we tend to invite people from similar disciplines, things that we know about, right? So, in the alcohol and drug abuse world, you think about, different kinds of the agencies, the public agencies that we have. You might think about different groups that would be affecting challenges or information you want to get more of, like mental health, that kind of stuff. But there are other groups that, might be interested in and could provide some information, including and some value, like maybe some private alcohol and drug abuse agencies, law enforcement, right? Different kinds of people like emergency room doctors, right? So again, really think about going outside of your quote comfort zone and recruiting people who you think would really add value. Diversity of skill sets, of different backgrounds, different insights are really quite important. And if you've been doing this work for a long time, I'm sure already see the value of that, right? And so it's not something we want to stay away from, or to think that it's just a certain type of person that needs to be in this collaborative. It's actually the opposite. So that's what that last bullet is. All right. Next slide. Okay, so retaining members. Basically, and this came out from literature done in the mid-'80s, and it's been replicated many times, which is the benefits have to outweigh the cost of participation, right? I keep coming back because the benefits are outweighing the cost of participation. And that can be a lot of different types of benefits, right? It could even be that, I've been locked up because of COVID with my 3 kids for 6 months, and I just got to get out of the house. Okay. So it could be tangible benefits, but also psychological benefits. Some of the things that has been shown to be helpful at retaining members, retaining participants, include things like, making sure people know what they're signing up for. I'm expected that many of you have some kind of orientation manual, or have thought that maybe you should have some kind of orientation manual for the collaborative. Go through it with them, right? Let them know what's in there. If there's bylaws, include those, share previous minutes, any kinds of reports or plans that you're working on or have done in the past. It's really that idea of grounding people in kind of what they are signing up for. Certainly allow time for questions. When we do this with a group that I do some work with in Lexington, we usually have the chairperson and at least one other person in that room. And that allows, again, a little bit more diversity of opinion and explanation of things, and really, allows some good dialogue. So it doesn't just have to be you as the leader. You could, even have a small group. Another thing that's been shown to help retain participants: offer opportunities that you said you were going to do when you were recruiting them, right? And again, this could be anything from new learnings, new opportunities, training, recognition, right? Being on a committee, maybe somebody was like, well, I know that you all are great planners, but I really like those numbers. And, if I join, I'm hoping, I can get on the budget committee kind of thing, which, frequently people don't want to be on. So you might easily agree that that's a place for this person, but you've promised that. Recognition really goes to the next bullet in terms of celebration of successes and even accomplishments. And this can be celebrations about the coalition's accomplishments and or about individual members, right? Maybe they, excelled in some way and got a reward or an award from, maybe their membership organization, right? Maybe they're, psychologist of the year for South Carolina, right? Know that, pay attention to that, acknowledge that. And then the last one I have here is, try to respond to the love language of the member. And some of you might be familiar with that book about the 5 love languages. It's everything from, sort of attention to, gifts to thank yous, right? So over time, you'll probably be able to figure out what some of these rewards are that people like to have. for me, a lot of times, I just write out a thank you note. I write out a thank you note. The last time I was over at the Lexington County Sheriff's Department, I walked by this board and he's got all the thank you notes there, and all 5 of mine, which look the same because it's the same, it's up there, right? And again, so follow through with stuff like that, and do what you can to make people really feel like the benefits outweigh the cost of participating, right? And sometimes if someone comes to you and is like, I'm going to be starting an online class. I don't think I can be coming on Tuesdays anymore. I'm not sure if I should continue to participate, or if there's some kind of alternative way that I could, maintain connected with you all and do the work, but I can't come on Tuesdays anymore, right? That's great. I mean, it speaks highly to the coalition, because usually what happens, well, not usually, a lot of times what can happen is people just don't show up, right? And then you don't know why. But the person, came to you, explained what was going on, and then even, wanted some solutions so they could still stay connected. So if that happens, definitely do what you can to keep them going, assuming that, you still want them in the coalition, you and the group still want them. Okay, next one. Be a good partner in the sandbox. Be a good partner. And, this again is something that I always have on my mind. I have had people who run, pretty big coalitions, alliances, again, in the state and just around the country, say, people are coming to my meetings, or not coming to my events or activity as much as they used to. First thing I always say is, are you going to theirs? Are you going to theirs? Right? Because sometimes, particularly if it's like a high visible activity that you're doing, it's just kind of easy. The coalition's around like a high visible problem area or something. It's just easier and less work to think about, well, I'm seeing you when you come to my event. But you always should be thinking about how that you can, reciprocate and go to their events. I like to learn people's names. I think that's important. People like to be called by their names, said correctly. Certainly things like being welcoming. When I was typing this one out, I thought this is kind of like that, there used to be a book that was like, everything I needed to know I learned in kindergarten, right? So, because this is just kind of like play nice in the sandbox, right? Don't disparage other groups, other people. Sometimes we might have competitors or people that we feel like, they might be trying to get some of that money, or they might be, trying to go for the same kind of grant that we're going in for. And, I know that we can beat them. I mean, there can be some competitive nature at times. And, the thing about it is, how do you handle that? Right. And certainly you don't want to be going disparaging or saying bad things about other groups or other people. I already said about this one in terms of reciprocate participation. Follow through on commitments. If you say, oh, I'm going to send you that file, or I'm going to, share that report with you that I was talking about in the meeting, like, do it. Write it down, right? Make sure you know how to connect with them. But follow through on that commitments. And again, sort of send follow-up notes, communications, and again, acknowledge the support achievements of others regularly. One of the things that I love to do is, have new people recruited, but also go to collaboratives or different kinds of coalitions where I don't really know a lot about that content area, right? Because I want to get some connection to new people that I might be thinking is something that I want more information on. So an example, recently I went to a coalition meeting over in West Columbia. That thing's been going on for 10 years. I wrote that grant. I know everybody in there. But I had heard that there might be some, people from this housing group coming. So I wanted to go hear that. And I did. And I'll tell you, I had, my eagle eye on that woman, because I was not letting her leave that meeting before she had my card and I had her card. And I told her that I was going to be contacting her. Right. And I did. So that's an example of, do what you say you're going to do. Okay, next slide. The list here are some groups that I put together as examples of places that you might not even thought about trying to recruit. I'm not going to go through all of these, but I will say that over the years, I've done a lot of work with the fatherhood coalitions, and they are pretty extensive around the state. In the Midlands area, it includes a couple counties together. It's called the Midlands Fatherhood Collaborative, but, there's Father to Father and just different entities that really want to get connected into the communities. Certainly, they, talk a lot about fatherhood and find people jobs and help people get set so they can pay child support, and certainly kids and youth are involved, right? So in the Courage Center, they were a couple of years ago, they called me up and was like, Pam, we want to do something for, the guys on fatherhood on Father's Day, but we don't really have a place. We know that you have a pavilion, you've got, picnic tables out there and a regulation size basketball court. Is there any chance we can come over on a Sunday and, have a cookout there on the grill? Absolutely. Absolutely. So they're interested in doing a variety of things that, many of us might not know easily. And then these are some of the other organizations. I was telling Meg the other day, Human Trafficking Task Force. You have to think about, well, how would that connect maybe with active living or, healthy living kind of stuff? And, you can think about that. You can ask people about that. Usually that would be done in the way of, we're getting ready, at least in Lexington, to have a drop-in center for people who are experiencing this, and even apartments, so people can kind of get back on their feet. Right. Well, guess what? They probably need fresh fruit and vegetables there. They probably could benefit from, any other kind of donations or information or resources that different groups like yours could provide. So, be aware of, different locations. I'll just say one more, the libraries. I mean, one of the things that I read probably about 5 years ago in an American Psychologist journal, how libraries were becoming a hub for mental health. It's true. It's true. So down in Orangeburg, and I know other counties like Richland, they have a social worker, at least one, who works there, right? And that's kind of their job, is to help people get connected into resources. So that is a group that certainly is one that you can think about. And I'm sure you've thought of a lot of these already. Okay, Meg, thank you. And let's see what we have for the next. Oh, so now it looks like we might be making a little bit of progress here. So go ahead and tell me what you think. So what kind of, again, words, observations, thing that this image evokes for you that's different than the one that we started out with, or maybe even some concerns that you might have just by looking at the picture. And I'll give you, a minute or so to answer some of that. Present but not engaged. Yeah, you can see both the ones that are crouching, like turned away, and sometimes we think about the tall, dark-haired lady as, she might be the queen bee, right? She might be ready to kind of move on to her next thing, and who knows? Any other thoughts about that? each doing their own thing, very siloed. Right now, they might be cooperating, right? One might pass the shovel to the other, but each kind of doing the own thing. Oh, Shelley already was thinking about the queen bee. Yes, yes. And Ms. Pearson, you're exactly right. They're not on task together. And you even see one on the left, kind of like, I don't even know if I want to be here anymore. It might be something that he's saying. My optimistic self would be, oh, he's just going to pick up something on the grass and then he's going to turn around and come back. Right. That might be with, his group of friends. That might be the case. But yes, you can see that at least for this group in the sandbox, there is a little bit of growth in terms of numbers. Okay, so that is all that I have. This is my contact information. I do live in Lexington, but do a lot of work all over the state. I certainly recognize some names that have been on the session today. So thank you for coming out. Thank you if you're new and just starting this work. It's fun, it's rewarding, and I'm sure you all either are doing well or will be doing well in the future. So if there's not any other question or comment in the Q&A, I think that's a wrap. Do I have it right, Meg?
Yes, thank you, Dr. M, for being with us today and for all of our participants. If you think of questions after you've had time to absorb some of this information today, feel free to email us. And we would really like to receive your thoughts on today's webinar. And if you would, at the end of review will be popping up on the screen, and also please be sure to register for our next Wisdom Wednesday that will be on July 26th with Dr. Andrew Kaczynski on new and emerging public health research, and we look forward to seeing you very soon.
Good, thank you.